Protecting supply chains with climate risk modeling. Steve Pochansky is climate risk modeling leader at PwC US. Hi, Steve.
Hey, Bob. Nice to be with you today.
Thanks for joining me. Really appreciate it. Steve, what is climate risk modeling and how does it work?
Yeah, so climate risk modeling, think of it as looking into the future, trying to project how what we think of as extreme weather might change in the future. So it sort of can start with projections of temperature increase, which is sort of the main outcome of additional carbon emissions being released into the atmosphere. And then how those temperature increases lead to things like increased precipitation, changes in wind patterns, changes in the jet stream, and then how all of that affects the frequency and severity of different extreme weather events like hurricanes and tornadoes and windstorms,
Mhm.
and then what we would call chronic perils, things like heat stress and drought and water stress and things like that. So.
Well, how accurate is the state of the art? I mean, how good are we now predicting the weather generally for that matter? And how does that affect climate risk modeling? Are there, probabilities that you have to take into account, multiple scenarios, margins of error that you have to specify?
I mean, yes, all of the above. I mean, I think the important thing to recognize is that this is a well-developed, mature, very robust and complex field of science. So
Mhm.
climate science is and climate modeling is different from weather prediction. If you follow me, there's different methods that scientists use to project into the long term. So looking more at long-term climate signals as opposed to what you might do to try to predict whether it's going to rain tomorrow or next week.
Mhm.
But I think the things to keep in mind is a very robust, well-developed field of science. As we've brought in, our climate science team, we have over a dozen PhDs on our team, really understanding what the science understands and doesn't understand. It helps us work with clients to cut through the noise of what they hear in the media, to have our climate scientists really explain
Mhm.
how they do their work and what the scientific community understands.
Okay, how can climate risk modeling be applied specifically to supply chains to identify and mitigate vulnerabilities in that area?
The way we apply climate risk modeling to any sort of physical location or physical asset is sort of all the same, Bob. So we start by looking at specific points on the globe. We take our models, the projections of frequency and severity of different events, and we look at those specific locations to see how those locations and the assets at those locations may be impacted by those events.
Mhm.
So when we look at a company's operations, we're looking at their buildings, their offices, manufacturing facilities, distribution sites, things like that. So supply chain is the same idea, but we'll be looking at where their suppliers located. What are the ports that they ship through? What are the routes that the different methods of distribution take? So for rail lines, for example, or flight patterns or shipping routes. But we're in all of those cases, we're looking at a specific location on the Earth, and we're looking out to some point in the future. We can go out as far as, the models go out as far as 2100 under different emission warming scenarios, and
Mhm.
then trying to look at how those specific locations are impacted by the different extreme events.
How is the output expressed? Are you assigning, say, a risk score to various aspects of supply chains?
That's typically how where we start is by assigning a risk score, and different companies have different methods of doing that. We use a 5 to 100 risk score. We don't go to zero because it's very difficult to say with any certainty that an event will never ever occur at a
Sure.
particular place. But we start with a 5 to 100 risk score, and then we build from that. So we can take from the risk score down to actual projections of frequency and severity. So how many category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 hurricanes are going to hit this point on Earth out into different time horizons under different scenarios.
Mhm.
That's sort of the next step. But I think the most important step to take is to then express those impacts in financial terms. So money is the great equalizer, the great equalizer across different types of metrics. So if we can express to clients how those different events may impact business interruption, what it might have cost in terms of disruption of their supply. Then they
Mhm.
can evaluate those risks like they evaluate geopolitical risk and just consumer behavior risk, other types of risks that impact the business. So expressing it in financial terms is really important to allow companies to make sound business decisions with the output.
So, what are the time horizons? Are they specified by the client?
Yeah, I mean that's a tricky part because most of our clients typically are used to looking out maybe 3 to 5 years for their what they would consider their long range plan. And
Hmm.
obviously, climate change occurs on a timescale that's broader than that, longer than that. So we will that is a bit of an education process that we have to work with companies to understand. But we will typically we'll consider 5 years short term, maybe 10 to 15 years is medium term, and then 20 to 30 years is long term. We tailor that depending on the specific client need. And there are some nuances about different regulations and what they require you in terms of the time horizons. But bottom line, what we're trying to help companies understand is that for climate change, you need to look out at a longer period of time, and you need that lead time in order to make the kinds of decisions to change your supply chain. And maybe one good example of that is we did a project for a beverage company looking at oranges and where oranges are able to be grown today, and maybe some places where they're grown today that they won't be suitable for them to grow in the future.
Hmm.
Orange tree takes about 5 years or more from when it's planted to when it actually bears fruit. So you need to have some advanced understanding of where to consider planting new orange groves or where to change your sourcing to in order to meet those time horizons.
Now, you say this shouldn't be confused with weather predictions. It's not some person sitting at a desk and saying what's going to happen next week, but we all know that the farther out you're trying to project, the less accurate your predictions are likely to be. I mean, 5 years from now is an eternity in terms of the chaos of trying to come up with weather predictions. So how do you even address that?
I think I would probably say or challenge you to, or we challenge our clients to change their point of view on that. We're not trying to make
Mm,
predictions. We're trying to look at scenarios. So, I guess that's one aspect of it. Another aspect of it is different types of weather related metrics are easier or more difficult to project with accuracy. Now, obviously, looking out to 30 years unlikely to get that exactly correct, right? But if we can be directionally correct to the
hmm.
point where we're again looking at scenarios to help clients understand what might they do if this scenario plays out, what might they
Yeah.
do if a different scenario plays out. So that's really what we're trying to achieve, not perfection, not precision, I would say, but directionally valuable information.
Well, the value of any type of modeling is essential because these companies are having to look far out in terms of planning their construction of plants and ports and routing and stuff like that. They, need to know more than what's going to happen next week. Okay, so along comes AI, though. I would imagine that that would give a huge boost to the ability of a climate risk model to be more accurate, and advanced analytics too. What role are they playing in climate risk prediction and mitigation today?
I mean, the possibilities are endless. I mean, I think we're all sort of in this great ideation mode of how to use AI. For us, the way that we're mostly applying it today, some of the low-hanging fruit, if you will, is the models produce just a lot of data. And when we work with clients, often they've got thousands of locations. And if we think about the supply chain, there's thousands of locations where they might be sourcing things from. So to look at all of those sites and try to discern and sift through all the data that comes out of the models is very difficult. So we use AI to
Hmm.
help distill down to the most important insights. I think there's a lot of optimism and promise for AI to actually improve the modeling that's done, and you see that now in some of the weather prediction. Uh, Companies starting to use AI to do better weather prediction. I expect the same to happen in the climate modeling community.
So how can supply chains use this capability to adapt to rising costs at the same time maintaining resilience, which is so all important? It's quite a
Yeah, I think
balance, isn't it?
it's all very interconnected, and
Yeah.
you know, I think it's important to also recognize, we talk about climate and we think about that as a future thing, but these issues are having impacts today. And a good example was I don't like to name company names, but a German auto manufacturer had an issue last year where their aluminum supplier was flooded out, and they literally could not get any aluminum to build their cars for about a month. They had to issue an earnings guidance. I mean, it was a significant $1 to $2 billion impact on earnings, and they had an overnight drop in their stock price of about 8% or so. So there are real implications of this that are happening today. So to your question about how to do this while managing cost, managing efficiency. I think it's prudent business. It's really required. You have to start to think about these things to get ahead of these challenges. In that example that I used, some of the competitors of this company were able to find alternative sources of aluminum where this company was not. So
Mhm.
being prepared for how you're going to deal with these things should they come up is extremely
Well,
important.
would a proper model in that case actually have given you a risk score or the possibility literally of flooding in that particular area? Does it get that specific?
It does, and flood is a very interesting parallel where flood is very specific. If you think about like spatial resolution, sometimes it floods on one side of the street and not another. So
Right.
you have to have very high, what we call high resolution models for flood, which we do, and we work with a third party for that particular model because it's so precise and so specific. But to your question, like yes, we are making predictions at the GPS coordinate level to help companies with the information that they need to make good decisions.
Steve Pochansky of PwC US, thank you very much for bringing us up to date on the state of the art of climate risk modeling for supply chains. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
My pleasure, Bob. Thank you.